Yes, evening everyone. Thanks for coming along. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Robert. I'm a senior consultant, also at Livebook. And yeah, I'm going to be doing a talk about Elixir and OTP releases, but as a lot of you are probably aware, Elixir is now officially 10 years old. It's a little bit of a fuzzy kind of start date, but if you look at GitHub, for instance, yeah, 10 years is marked from the 0.5.0 release back in 25th of May 2012. So yes, we've just gone past the 10-year mark, and yeah, as of an hour or so ago, there were 18,000 commits, 20,000 stars, 1,100 contributors, 121 releases. So yeah, it's been going strong. And under the rule of thumb that any project will exist for as long as it already has existed, we've got at least 10 years left of Elixir out there for all of us to enjoy. And yes, a lot of you who have been in the community for a while will have gone through a lot of the milestones. There's a person on the Elixir forum who's put together a couple of timelines of different things when the very, very first commit of an Elixir that was a little bit different to the Elixir we know now was actually, yeah, in 2011. So last year, the start of last year, people were talking about 10 years. And that's when the very first commit that Jose created. But yeah, then we've got Phoenix coming in 2014, other projects 2015, Nerves 2016, and yeah, LiveView. I remember the buzz about that when it came out. I just started using Elixir at that point, and then yeah, in more recent couple of years on the Elixir space, we've got Numerical Elixir NX and Livebook. Yeah, it's sort of two of the really groundbreaking efforts out there to move Elixir into different directions. And there's heaps of other pet projects there that are coming along as well too. That's just a small taste. And at Elixir Conf, I don't know whether Josh is on the call, but did you see this, Josh? If he is on the call, sorry, I'll go back. Let me go back. Maybe he's not on the call. Anyway.
I am.
Oh, you are.
If you see down the bottom in the middle, that's when Livebook started.
Yes. Oh, yes, there it is. I didn't even notice that. Yes. Let me. Yeah. Yeah, right there. Nice. Stop doing this. Clear. Get back to it. Yeah, so it's been a very enjoyable journey, I think, for most people in the community. And there's been a few other celebrations. If people want to check out some podcast and a YouTube video where people talking about the 10 years of Elixir. The podcast has Jose himself talking about the history of Elixir and where it's going. Version 2, I think, possibly teasing some information about types as we discussed earlier. But yeah, I can post some things, some resources if people want to check out the history of Elixir or the celebrations, etc. And so yeah, Paul mentioned that something that we do something interactive. So I was interested if anyone wanted to have briefly discuss how they came to Elixir and how it's sort of how it's impacted their careers and what their hopes and fears are and dreams are for the future. I'm happy to go first. As I said, I started my Elixir journey officially in 2018 at Telstra. And prior to that, wasn't really had sort of I guess the beam had fallen out of favor with me because I was kind of into static types. But when when an opportunity comes up to work on something as I guess as modern and fresh as Elixir, you sort of you do think twice. And yeah, I'm very glad that I did, because it was a breath of fresh air compared to sort of the Java ecosystem, which is kind of the most mainstream thing that I was involved with before. And the sort of the purest statically typed pure functional programming elitist within me. I was able to quieten that devil on the shoulder, and I've never looked back. And when I first started doing Elixir, I think, like most people, was like, why doesn't it have types? We should have types. And I'm very interested to see what they do. But I have been putting code into production for 3-4 years now, almost without types, and it's fine. So it's just icing on the cake. So that's my story. Anyone else brave enough to unmute and share any anecdotes, any thoughts, etc.?
I'll venture forth. So I was introduced to Erlang about 1.5 years ago through a talk called The Art of Destroying Software, which advocates for, instead of refactoring code, writing code that you can deliberately delete and rewrite from scratch when the abstraction is wrong. And from Erlang, I was introduced to Elixir. And really what I saw in Erlang and Elixir was a direct solution to many of the problems I was having working in Python at the time. Like, I wanted a more resilient language to write things in that wasn't so liable to fall over. I wanted a more functional language. I liked the fact that in Erlang, equals means equals. Like, I know it from mathematics, not this weird assigning things bit. I'm a little sad that Elixir did away with that. It's probably a lot more productive as a consequence. But and then the pipe operator from Elixir, having used Unix exclusively for my home systems for the last 2 years, it was like, this is the language that I want to move in. And when I finally devoted time to learning Elixir, I found that within 2 months, I was at the same level of solving problems in Elixir that I was in Python. That might speak more to my lack of skill in Python than to my skill in Elixir. But the mental model that Elixir uses for transforming data and kind of functionally moving it around worked much better for my mathematical brain than any object-oriented programming or even procedural programming did prior to my use of Elixir. So I found that really useful, and I just haven't looked back since.
Cool, thanks, Roland.
I'll go next. I was working at a company that was a large Ruby shop and was probably pushing the boundaries of performance for Ruby. And we had a bunch of people that were language nerds, I guess, much like a lot of people are here. And we were looking at different languages. I think we were doing sort of brown bags, and we're looking at, I think we started with Haskell and did some sessions with that, but that seemed to peter out. And then someone mentioned Elixir. So we started looking at that. And I think, being a sort of a Ruby Rails shop, we were initially, really like the syntax. I think it shows Jose's background being on the Rails core team, and that Ruby is a lovely, very much prioritizes programmer happiness. So syntax is important. And then I think we started to really enjoy the concurrency aspects of Elixir and the Beam, and started using Elixir in anger on some services, and were really blown away by its performance and the ease of writing some really easy to understand and test code that yeah, stood the test of time. So, and from that, I think, like a lot of people that have been in Rails or Ruby for a while, sort of got into the Elixir community, and yeah, it's been a lovely language to work with over the last 5, 6, maybe, yeah, 6 years maybe. So yeah, as Rob said, long may it continue. If we get another 10 years out of it, that would be fantastic.
Indeed, indeed. And something I forgot to say that you reminded me of, Martin, is that yeah, I was always a bit skeptical about Matt's, the creator of Ruby, the assertion about developer happiness. But yeah, when I started working in Elixir and sort of grokked it, I think that, you know, it definitely did prove the that his assertion to be true. That yeah, the language, the ecosystem tooling and that sort of thing, it's yeah, very it's taken all those lessons from Ruby and others, and combined it with with a really a battle tested platform, yeah, to make something that's really great, and yeah, is a often, more often than not, a joy to work with.
I'll go next. I think I picked Elixir up in 2014 for the first time due to the publication of Programming Elixir by Pragprog. And obviously that was like Dave Thomas, who basically introduced me to Ruby. So yeah, I was part of the, well, still am part of the Ruby community as well. And I knew, Jose from his work with the device authentication framework in Ruby. And I think that's probably what piqued the interest of Rubyists to come and sort of check out Elixir. But contrary to all these other smart people that have been talking, when I first looked into it and started reading the book, basically I didn't get it. I was like, what's the point of this language? Why even bother? First functional programming language as well. So it was kind of breaking my brain, as well as me sort of thinking, I don't really understand why this thing exists, and I should just go back to Ruby. And so I did, and I kind of put it down for a little while. And then I sort of ended up seeing more cool things being created. I sort of ended up stubbornly persisting, because it's just kind of like, all right, well, obviously I don't get it, but there's a whole bunch of really smart people that do. So I should just kind of like stubbornly persist on this and, look at some more tutorials. I sort of picked up, what is it? The Learn Elixir.tv screencasts and the Learn Phoenix ones, and there was like a Phoenix for Rails developers book, and basically I just sort of started cramming my head with all of this stuff, and basically I guess kept on doing it until I loved it. But yeah, now obviously I'm absolutely all in on it, and think it's absolutely lovely, just as lovely to work with as any other programming language that I'm used to and subjectively have affection for. But yes, it was a slow ramp up, because yes, it broke my brain before I could get it. It was from object oriented to functional. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, they can come from that angle too. So been a .NET developer since its inception. Languages like Delphi and the Visual Basic. I won't admit that one. I came across Bruce Tate's book, Designing Elixir Systems with OTP, and it's got a cute picture on the front of it with a bee, and my wife looks after bees, so that's what got me in. So it's a good book if you're interested in that one,
Yeah,
which
cool.
covers OTP. And in .NET, I think concurrency programming, and that's still very hard to do. So yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, that those stories are, very, familiar in their way. Thank you, Paul, for being honest about your initial appraisal. And I think, for me, it was actually Erlang. Not that I did any, but did very much Erlang. But when I first came across that, and I was like, what the hell is this? Even though I had done Prolog at uni, so the syntax wasn't too bad. But yeah, didn't quite get it at first. But it sort of stuck in the back of my mind. So yes, but yeah, if there's no one else, I can transition into my the second part of my bit, if we want. All right, let's do it. I will. Oops. My apologies. What has gone wrong here? I've lost my window. There we go. All right. There. Okay. So for the second part, I'm going to do a sort of a 2022 edition of a talk I did last year, which was in May of last year, when Elixir 1.12 and OTP 24 coming out. So this year we have Elixir 1.14 coming out, and OTP 25 has already been released. So just going to like last year, go through some fairly low level things that have come into the two languages and standard libraries, and in the form of a Livebook, which can be found at this URL. And I haven't yet added instructions on how to spin it up in your own instance of Livebook, but I will add that afterwards. So let's dive in. So yeah, firstly with Elixir 1.14. So 1.14 is still in development. It's due to come out any time. I haven't been keeping really close tabs on what people have been saying on Twitter, etc., about it. But and I've got a spelling mistake. How embarrassing is that? Yes. So one of the big sort of library features, standard library features, is a new type of supervisor called partition supervisor. So in this code example here, we have it's sort of something that emulates a more traditional use of a dynamic supervisor. So we start up a dynamic supervisor in some other supervisor, which just is the top level of our code here, and then we've got a whole bunch of processes that want to talk to that dynamic supervisor to start some child, in this case an agent. So this dynamic supervisor that we've started here, can be a bottleneck. And just to prove that this does run in Livebook, I will run that, and it's going to error out on me. And you can see that we've created a dynamic supervisor, a single one that has 10,001 workers underneath it. That's 10,000 there. But they're all going through one dynamic supervisor. So what partition supervisor does is it starts a child per core. So in this example, we're starting a dynamic supervisor child, and we reference this partition supervisor by name, and we can then get access to the children or add children using one of these via naming tuples. And we say via partition supervisor instead of via whatever else, via the registry, etc. So if we run this one, we're trying to spawn 10,000 workers, but we spawn them through a dynamic supervisor, but we find which dynamic supervisor we want via the partition supervisor. So in this case, we have all these, I've got a 16 core machine. So I've got 16 of these dynamic supervisors, and then each dynamic supervisor has 600 or so children underneath. So yeah, the load is the load of which dynamic supervisor our workers are under is spread out, and the key to the distribution among them is there's a little key here. You can use anything you want there. It's kind of opaque, the partitioning strategy at this stage. So yes, I was going to do some benchmarking, but I just couldn't quite get it to work inside the Livebook environment to show that this partition supervisor strategy avoids bottlenecks. Take their word for it that it does. So most of the rest of the changes are in Elixir are pretty small, but we'll rush through them. So there's been some improvements to daytime parsing. So this is a type of ISO 8601 format for a daytime prior to Elixir 1.14. This would fail with an invalid format, but there is now there is now a new version of a new option that can be passed to from ISO, and the extended mode, which is the mode that you most likely see, and I think what gets printed back out by default. But you can also choose basic, and this will parse that daytime, whereas in 1.14, whereas previously we'd get an error. There's been improvements to scientific notation for floats. So in Elixir 1.13, both of these floats, 1.23 by 10 to the power 15 and 16, would have been rendered in scientific notation, but now anything that's below 10 to the power 16 that meets some other criteria will be printed out in full. So that could be useful, something to be aware of if you're relying on inspecting or printing out floats. Another thing with inspect on structs, it now shows the fields in the order they were declared. So in this case, if we have a struct and we are specifying the keys in that order, and then we create one and print it out. What have I done wrong there? There is a bug. Where is that? Where is the bug? Anyway, not to worry. I've probably messed up my sigil somewhere, but the idea is that yes, rather than it being printed out in alphabetical order A, B, C, D, it's still printed out B, A, D, C. Another thing with inspects is expression-based inspection for a couple of the different data types. So if we run this code, you can see that if we inspect some map sets, what we get out is valid Elixir syntax that you could copy back into IEX or into Livebook, and this should evaluate fine. So rather than it being some opaque bit of string that's written out, yeah, it's something that's useful. An interesting, fairly low-level change is that guard expressions can now be used in the size of bit strings in pattern matching. So prior to 1.14, this code where we're trying to extract the 3 A's from the start of this string, having an expression in there would fail because this has to either be a variable or an integer. So I guess you could do the computation outside and put it in, but now you can actually put that expression straight in. So yeah, interesting little change there. Might help reduce some lines of code. Something that I'm pretty sure I've run into is that parts of composite types can now be used as pins in pattern matches in maps. So let's say we have some atom in a variable foo, and we want to use it to match the foo bar out of this map here. So we've got foo bar and baz blah, but we just want to pattern match this one out and get the value here. Yeah, so again, prior to 1.14, this would have given us a compiler error saying you can't use a pin, the pin operator as part of the data structure for pattern matching. But again, now we can. So yeah, that hopefully will open up some more flexible and terse code, perhaps. Kernel got a new function, binary slice. So yes, if we have the letters A to Z and we turn them to a string with all the letters in the alphabet, we can binary slice, and yeah, we can. This is the stepped range syntax. So this is saying, slice 0 to 25, but take 5-step increments, so we get the first, 6th, 11th, etc. letters returned. Slice can also work on binaries, and I won't go into detail about that syntax there, but that's just showing some interesting jumps that the steps are blind to the fact that these are separate segments of the binary. It's all just one big string of binary. And there's another function with 3 arguments, provides a start and a length argument. So yeah, we can get the 4th to the 7th argument there out of that string. Keyword and map got some new functions. One of them is from keys, which just produces a keyword or a map depending on which module, from a list of keys, and it will have a default value in each case. This works just as well for map. And again, both modules got this replace lazy, and as the name suggests, it replaces the field that you pass in lazily. What does that mean? So if we run this example where we have a map with keys A and B, and we try to replace A, it works as you would expect. It replaces the value in A with lowercase a's to uppercase A's. But if we run it on a replace that doesn't exist, it doesn't do anything. It's a no-op, and hence why this updating function is an anonymous function as opposed to a hard-coded value. So this lazy replacement can be useful when the replacement function is expensive. So yeah, I've got a nice tail recursive Fibonacci implementation there. I've just compiled that, and if we time that when we want to replace a and we're just going to replace the value with A with Fibonacci of the 100,000th Fibonacci. If I run that, it doesn't take too long because it's tail recursive, 123 milliseconds. But down here for the next example, we're trying to do a Fibonacci of a 1 billion, which, I mean, I have no idea how long that will take, hours, days, on this machine. But if we run this, it comes back in 3 microseconds because we're actually trying to replace C, and C doesn't exist in the original in the original keyword. So yeah, no, it doesn't actually run this extremely expensive function. So yeah, that can be useful. Laziness, it does have its place. Map, set, got filter and reject. I won't even bother going through them because they're the same as the filter and reject in other modules. Stream got some new functions. One is duplicate a stream. So we duplicate something 5 times here, and it can be anything. So we've got it can be a data structure. So we're duplicating a stream. Exactly what you'd want to use that for, I can't imagine off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's very useful. String dot. Yeah, there were a couple of other stream functions that changed or were added to, but I didn't get time to sort of put them in here, and they're probably yeah, not that interesting anyway. And string.slice now accepts these step ranges, so we're starting to see this step ranges, which I believe were brought in 1.12, starting to get used in a lot of the functions around the place. So you couldn't do this in 1.13. It would say an error. It says it doesn't accept step ranges, but in 1.14 it works. So that's Elixir. Move on to OTP 25. So yeah, big news that probably has the most impact for everyone on this call, especially if you're in the Apple ecosystem, is the fact that JIT is now enabled on ARM, and yeah, I think big incentive given that everyone's moving to Apple Silicon, and yeah, who knows what the real performance benefits are. I've seen single to double digit % differences to orders of magnitude speed ups. I guess it really depends on the case, but yeah, that's in there. That's a big update. I unfortunately don't have Apple Silicon at the moment, so I couldn't test it even if I wanted to. The Erlang Maps module got some functions to kind of up. It seems like they're taking Erlang are now taking quite a lot of inspiration back from Elixir. So in Elixir we've got a group by function on enums. We now have the same thing for maps. I did do some benchmarks on these they performed about the same. So there's no benefit targeting specific data structures, it would seem, versus just using enum. So yeah, I'd stay with enum. And yeah, similarly, the list module in Erlang has an enumerate, which is similar to the with index. So with index takes an enumeration, and yeah, the keys in the enum become the keys in a keyword list, and the indices become the values. List enumerate is the same, but it flips it around. So the index is the first element in that pair, and it also starts with one, like, so, yeah, some kind of animal. But if you want it to behave sort of like Elixir, at least just flipped, or you can give it its initial offset. Lists also got unique. Again, copying Elixir. Works the same. And you can specify how to define uniqueness to make the behavior a bit different there. And a big addition to Erlang, which is if you're in Elixir land, for most of the time won't be much use, but it is interesting yet again that they're taking more inspiration from Elixir. There's the maybe expression feature, and it's has a similar intent to the with special form from Elixir. So we can see here that we have a maybe and an else and an end. We have some expressions here that with a match or a match or return operator, which is like the reverse arrow in the with form. And yeah, the variables get bound from one expression to the next. And then if something doesn't match on one of these match or return operators, we come down to into the else leg, and then we can match out different conditions there. So yeah, very, very similar in intent to with, and because maybe wasn't a keyword, yeah, they have also implemented like a selectable feature flag type of system where you can enable a particular feature in a module, so to avoid name clashes, etc. So yes, if you're doing any Erlang, this might be useful. Yeah, in Elixir, it's not going to make much difference. Erlang's improved the error messages in binary construction. So if we're trying to construct some binary here, and it wants this second segment wants a binary of size 4, but we only send it a binary of size 3, it's going to complain, but doesn't really tell you which argument is wrong. But now in OTP 25, we'll say segment 2, so this one of type binary, the value ABC is shorter than the size of the segment. The size of the segment we want is 4. So that's a little bit more useful. Probably something of mild interest to people who are using low-level OTP stuff in their stacks, and not just building Phoenix stuff, and maybe some of the ETS tables in various Elixir libraries might look at this. There's now adaptive write concurrency in ETS, so you can choose write concurrency auto instead of just false or true. And what this allows for is a feature that will look at the parallelism, how concurrently the table is being written to, and it will turn on concurrency if it feels like it's becoming a bottleneck. So I've just got some benchmarks to show how this works, and it's not just a silver bullet. So I've got two tables, a current sequential one, a little benchy benchmark, and it's going to run both of these functions in with parallelism of 8, so 8 threads, and they're just going to insert the random values into the table. So I'll kick this off now. What's happened here? Oops. That's interesting. What is the version number? Oh, actually, I think it's that. I think 1.7. Yeah, there we go. Yes, that's yes. If you weren't aware, in Livebook, you can install packages that you need using mix install. Takes syntax the same as what's in your mix.exe file. Right. So this is running along. Okay. And while that runs, I have another one that I will run just to do some things concurrently. So yes, this benchmark showed us that the write concurrency auto and false are pretty much the same. So I've seen running this Livebook while I was developing it. These two exchange the lead, but there's hardly any difference at concurrency of or parallelism of 8. And that kind of makes sense that it won't turn it on if it doesn't think it's contended, if there's not too much contention. However, in our second benchmark, where we use 16 threads instead, or 16 cores, then we can see that write concurrency auto is like almost 5 times, or 4.5 times faster. So yeah, something to think about with ETS. That maybe just having by default write concurrency to auto might be the way to go, unless there's a particular reason to disallow it for race conditions or consistency purposes, etc. So yes, and oh yes, there's more stuff with working with floats, but I won't go through that for the sake of time. So outside of the two languages and their standard libraries, there's been a lot happening last couple of years. But really, the standouts for me are the Livebook and everything in the Elixir NX space. So Roland mentioned Explorer, but there's the low-level numerical Elixir, which is the tensors and compiling Elixir to GPUs. There's Axon, which is a deep learning library. Explorer, which is a data frame library. And then there's now a new kid on the block called Scholar. And Scholar is I think the best way of describing it is a more generalized machine learning algorithms than Axon, but it's very early days. So that's only sort of been in existence for a month or something like that. But yeah, there's lots happening in this this kind of space, as I said earlier, to move Elixir into new interesting areas. But that is all I had. I will leave it there. If there are any questions, I'm happy to go back, look at anything in particular. But otherwise, thank you very much.
Anyone got some questions for Rob? If so, please feel free to unmute yourself and turn your camera on if possible. Shock and awe from the fire hose of information.
Yes, that's what I suspect. TMI. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks very much, Paul.
Well, I could add. It's fascinating. As I said in my chat line, an old coder from a long time ago. I find this fascinating. Half the trouble for me is getting the thing installed. I'm actually just a month ago retired, so I still find all these languages fascinating, and they do things that my uni days didn't even dream about. So some of the time, my problems. Oops, I can do the video. Yes, some of the time the problem is getting it installed on, shall we say, a non-standard laptop like Windows when everybody's running Macs, for example. Right. So I'll leave you to think that's. There's a lovely meetup group in Melbourne, and we had some great. I've been to the last two this year, and before COVID, I used to go along there, and that was quite stimulating. So thanks very much for running the meetup tonight, people.
Thank you
No
for coming
worries.
along, Mike.
And yeah, to the point of installation, depending on what you want to do, I would definitely recommend checking out Livebook, because you can run Livebook in the cloud. Let me see if I can do this quickly. I can. I think I'm still sharing my screen.
Yep.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it. So yes, there's a badge you can put in, say, in a GitHub repository to run a Livebook on a particular cloud instance. Configure Livebook, launch on fly. So we've actually done this at work. You can launch a Livebook on fly, and on the free tier. So then that's going to be running in a VM in fly infrastructure somewhere, and then you can just start hacking away. So I'll just make this a bit smaller again, so I can figure out what I'm doing. But yeah,
Frantically making notes here.
yeah, just doing all the basic stuff. Yeah, live coding style.
Okay.
I put a link to the Livebook website in the Zoom chat.
Okay.
So you can look at that, and that also has the launch on fly button. So the nice thing about Livebook is it's run entirely on in the browser on a remote server. So as he's running reevaluate here, he's able to run any Elixir code that he wants. So you can use it as like a browser-based REPL for exploring Elixir and Erlang, for that matter, as he showed earlier.
Yeah, and it's not just not just the little bits of code. You can create modules and spawn processes and so pretty much anything you can copy out of an example, you should be able to get working in a Livebook remotely. So that's definitely gets around that problem. But I mean the story with Erlang and Elixir on Windows, I didn't think was that bad, but this just
might not be. It might be my understanding. I do have some literal comprehension issues. There's a bit of autism thrown in here, so sometimes I can have the information in front of me, but I don't actually see it, if you know what I mean. So anyway, so hence I frantically write some notes and hope I can get something happening. And I'll have a look at the Livebook, and because we were just about to, last time at the Melbourne group, we were just about to have a web a live laptop development session, and we had more pizzas than people, so we ended up trying to reduce the number of pizzas. So but they're an awesome, lovely group. Yeah. I can't tell from here whether any of you are from Melbourne at the moment. Maybe some of you are. But there we go. Thank you very much.
No problem. Yeah, good luck with the live view. Definitely reach out. Let us know if we any of us know if we can help more.
Yep. Thank you. Yep.